读。
好，开始了。
Good morning, everyone. Today we analyze the global meat industry from a cross-country perspective, focusing on Australia, India, China, the United States, and Germany. Instead of looking at each country separately, we treat the industry as one global system. While companies face similar competition, the outcomes are quite different across countries. So our main idea is simple. The industry has a similar structure, but different outcome, and it's now changing. We focus on three questions. First, what is similar? From our country face cost pressure, supply chain issues, and competition from alternative protein. Second, why are there differences? Because countries differ in income, culture, and regulation, which lead to different demand and competition. Third, what is changing? The industry is now affected by climate pressure and new technology. These are becoming important for future competition. To analyze this, we use Porter's 5 forces as a starting point, and then we use environmental factors to explain the differences and changes. So overall, we move from structure to differences to change. Now let's begin with the industry structure.
Okay, to build a common baseline for the later global analysis of the meat industry, I will first use the Porter 5 forces. This model helps us to understand how the industry competes globally. So in my view, the three most important forces in the global meat industry are rivalry, buy powers, and supply powers. I will start with rivalry. So the rivalry is generally high because many farms sell similar meat products and compete on prices, qualities, and efficiency. So in a mature industry like meat, it is hard for firms to clearly differentiate their products. So competitions become more intense. The second important force is buy powers. Buy powers is medium to high because large supermarkets, restaurants, and distributors can put strong pressures on producers. They often demand lower prices, stable supply, better qualities, and higher food safety standards. This means producers need to meet buyer expectations while also controlling the costs. The third important force is supply powers. Supply powers is medium because meat producers depend heavily on food, energy, land, and the logistics. When food prices rise on transport because more expensive, supplier powers become stronger, and producers face more cost pressures. So this is especially important in the meat industry, where supply chains are long and input costs matter a lot. The other two forces are also relevant. The threat of substitutes is rising, especially as plant-based and alternative proteins become more visible in some markets. The threat of entrance is lower because the industry requires large investment, strong supply chains, and complies with food safety and regulatory standards. Overall, the global meat industry is mainly shaped by strong rivalries, buy pressures, and supply pressures. However, these forces do not operate in exactly the same ways across the countries and regions. So next, we look at why these differences exist.
Following Bobby's analysis of 5 forces, I will now focus on why these forces look different across the world, especially from socio-economic and cultural perspective. First, from the socio-economic perspective, the key issue is market size and purchasing power. The U.S. meat industry was worth $346.4 billion in 2024, while in China's market it was $157.7 billion. In India's market is much smaller, but it's growing quickly. So the demand is strong across the world, but not for the same reason. In richer markets, demand is supported by higher income and more established consumption patterns. But in faster growing markets, firms may face stronger price pressure. So the socio-economic factors shape not only the different demands, but also how the competition it works in each market. The second difference is consumption structure. China accounts about 28% of global meat consumption, while US accounts more than 17%. India still got much lower per person meat consumption, but Australia is quite different because it's export oriented. So the key question is not only market size, but also whether the firm compete for domestic consumers or export markets. This will create different competitive pressures and different buyer expectations. Culture makes these differences even clear. In India, religion shape obvious boundaries around pork and beef consumption. It's not just a simple consumer's preference. It's about how it reflects the deeper social value, and it can change what kind of meat product can succeed in this market. And in Germany, pressure comes from another culture shift. More people are paying attention to health, sustainability, and animal welfare, which increase the appeal of plant-based alternatives. The threat of substitute is much stronger in some markets than in others. So in my view, I think culture is especially important because it influences demand volume, and it can also reshape the limits of demand itself. So overall, socio-economic factors shape the scale of demand, and the cultural factors shape the form of demand. Together, they could help to explain why firms in the same industry, like the meat industry, shows different levels of buyer power, substitute pressures, and competitive intensity across the world. So that's all I want to share. Let's over to William.
Okay. Thank you, Chen Hongyu. From Inspire Space, I will now talk about the political and legal development industries. Where competitions, we can see the competition is shaped not only by the model, but also by government rules and the legal system. For example, some countries focus more on food safety, while the other place more attention on export control. Such abilities or legal restrictions, this means farmers are not competing under the same condition in every market. Australia is stronger influenced by the import standing because the industry depend heavily on oversized markets. In China, food staff government has a stronger effect on competition, so the main idea here is that rules reshape competition. Regulation also affects the competition more directly. If rules are strict, it becomes hard for the new farmers to enter the market. At the same time, existing farmers may face higher costs in areas like production, transport, and compliances. Regulation can also create different levels of pressures across country, so farmers do not compete in the same way everywhere. In some cases, it can also affect the balances of power between the farmers, buyers, suppliers, and the local productions. For the five forest perspective, this is important because regulation can reset entry barriers, change reveal, and affected by our supplies powers. So the key importance on the side is that regulation change competition. Overall, there are different markets because the law and the regulation are not the same across country. As a result, farmers face different risk, cost, and marketing conditions, which means they cannot use the same strategy everywhere. Instead, they need to adopt to local rules and business development. So even though the meat industry is global, competition is still shaped by national conditions. So the final point is that different rules create different marketing. The next space where country expensive.
All right, thank you, William. Since we already talked about the brief and the other aspects, let's talk about how physical conditions shapes the meat industry. At the global level, the industry depends on physical resources and physical conditions such as food, water, animal health, climate, and infrastructure. But these pressures do not affect evenly in every country in the same way. Australia does benefit from the favorable export geography, yet the climate variability and the livestock supply shocks can still disrupt the margins. India has a strong livestock scale, but uneven cold chain testing and traceability and processing infrastructure limits competitiveness. China also has a scale, but the competitiveness depends on whether the supply chain can turn it into the scale into a reliable market industry. So, physical advantages is not just about having more land or livestock. It also depends on whether they can convert resources condition into a stable, efficient, and regulatory compliant supply system. Same involves for the technological aspect. It also shapes differently across the nations. Contemporary technologies such as AI, the blockchain, and biotechnological are increasingly important for the global business. And in the meat industry, they matter when they improve automation, traceability, and supply chain capability. Australia shows that this is through automation, AI, and traceability that improves efficiency, worker safety, and Germany shows that it has a strong technological upgrading through robotics and improving in efficiency, hygiene, and standardization. India shows that this is the key issue and it is still trying to upgrade its cold chain, testing, and traceability. While China is trying to improve technology, also at the same time, they are aware of how technology matters. So the difference is not whether the technology matters, but it depends on how most of the market are utilized and strengthened their competitiveness. Now talking about the synthesis. Based on our understanding, compiling it together, the global meat industry is safe to say that it's been shared by pressures, but competitive advantages remains uneven. All the countries face physical constraints and all are affected by the technological changes. However, they do not respond to them in the same way. Australia and Germany shows a stronger technological upgrading, while India and China shows the scale is not enough. Competitiveness depends on whether the firm can build reliable, higher valued supply systems. Overall, the key issue is not whether these pressures exist, but how effectively each country converts them into productivity, reliability, and the market credibility. Now, to conclude, we will talk about it. Thanks, Helen.
To conclude, the global meat industry is both similar and different. There are similarities such as strong competition and cost pressure. There are also differences because of culture, income, and regulation. Most importantly, the industry is changing. Climate and technology are being key driver of the future. And thank you guys. That's our references, and we are welcome for any questions.